DG episode 72. I'm even struggling through that today. My name is Dave Hunt, and I'm joined hopefully by Michael Swick.
Testing. I was gonna mess with you and just not actually make sound and move my lips, but you might break if that happened.
that would be you like
This is
making
what when
like
you
when I
rearrange.
froze. Yeah, like that one day I was messing with you
Yeah,
and I pre-froze myself.
yeah. You rearrange furniture once, Dave, and you mess everything up. So hopefully you're good now.
It's like a messing with like a tiki doll or something like that, or what are those things? Voodoo dolls or something?
Yeah, that's actually how your Elgato is set up. Is
With the voodoo doll pinned, it like the
mhm,
Elgato runs through the doll. So.
yep.
All right, so we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that goes live on Twitch when we don't have technical issues. It only goes live once, but the last couple weeks it's been 2 times on the same day. But that's just to make sure that you know that we're live. It's all like a corrugated plan. That's not even a word.
So you get the email notifications twice.
Yeah.
We just want to make sure.
We also post the show on podcast platforms every Thursday morning at 6 a.m. We are 72 weeks consecutively going. And you can also just follow us on the almost any social media. It's in our show notes. You can also just go to our website, digitaldaysgaming.com, which will take you to our podcast host. And we are going to jump into the news. But first, I don't want to forget, just because I don't talk about it enough, we do have a Teesprings account. We have shirts. I have one on, if you can kind of see it on the stream. This is a hoodie. And you can pick the shirts in different colors, the hoodies in different colors as well. It's just teesprings.com, I think, /Digital Days Gaming, but the link is in the show notes. Yeah. And if you want to buy a shirt, because it's actually almost like t-shirt weather for you to go outside in. Like,
I had a snowstorm yesterday, Dave, so I don't know about that.
I didn't get any snow, but you can check that out, and it's just another way to help support us. We're not going anywhere anytime soon because almost everything's canceled. I even think like PAX is still up in the air for September, and that kind of was like one of my goals. But I think if we could afford to go to PAX, I don't know if I want to go to PAX yet, depending on vaccination numbers. So,
yeah, and people are going to be acting real stupid the first time they go out, so it might not be worth it.
But it just could be a way to help support us, whether we want to buy games to help stream or do better coverage, buy different equipment that actually works. Because for some reason it seems like my stuff's not working. Any of those things could be used for those funds as well. But with that, we're going to jump into the news. And disclaimer, it's going to be a little Xbox heavy this week, guys.
Luckily, there was some mild PlayStation news today. But yeah, it's a lot of Xbox heavy, and it's just how it is right now. So we talked about it last week, but the roundtable didn't happen yet. So we were kind of just guessing on what was going on. Bethesda and Microsoft, they did this roundtable where they kind of like introduced everybody as if like it was they were all getting introduced for the first time to the world, which was a little odd, but it was a really good way to reassure people that are fans of Bethesda that like, hey, even though we own them, we are not going to screw them up. Yeah.
Like we talked about, this is Bethesda. This is who they are. It's almost like the same. Like there's a lot of companies that sometimes you don't realize, like corporations own like 2 major retail organizations. You're like, oh, those are the same corporation, and you don't really realize it. And I think on the outside, like you won't realize that. I don't know, like on their box art, if it's going to say Microsoft Studios and Bethesda and the studio proper, like, Iron, like Machine Gun. Like, is it going to have all 3 of those logos on there?
Yeah, it's definitely probably because it's such a good name. And this basically is just reassuring them, like, hey, Pete Hines isn't going anywhere. He's still in charge of Bethesda. Because it just makes sense to do things that way, because now Microsoft has 23 studios. Mm-hmm. Phil Spencer can't possibly run the hardware division and 23 studios. So that's like Bethesda is still going to be Bethesda, but it's just they're going to have some games that are exclusive to Microsoft.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like there's any intentions of them like moving any of their equipment or their headquarters to like Washington. Like it seems like as of now, like Aaron Greenberg tweeted out a whole thread the other day of kind of like going over him and Phil and a couple of their hierarchy going to Bethesda, and almost like that they were. And I don't want to like equate it like this because not everybody's going to understand this, but Michael will get this reference, almost like it was a corporate visit like where the boss was coming.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, they talked about Microsoft does a holiday meeting where they get all the heads of the studios together, and that sounds kind of amazing because now when they do that meeting, it's 23 heads of studios, like saying like, "Hey, here we are
dinner
with
table
this."
I want to sit at.
Yeah, and which just sounds amazing because I guess that's something that Bethesda did on their own and Microsoft did on their own. Now they're going to be doing that together, and they just talked about stuff that I don't think people thought too much about it, but me and you have played around with the idea of like they'll be able to learn from each other and learn technology from each other. We talked about like, oh, what if they just give Fallout Obsidian, that sort of thing. I don't know if they'll go that far because Bethesda's still going to be Bethesda,
right.
But like id Tech, id Software, they make some really good gunplay games that have a really stylized look, and you know, Halo Infinite could really use just a little extra juice. Yeah. Now they can go to id and be like, make our guns better, make our visuals better. There's a lot of little cross stuff that they can do and learn from each other. And when you look at like Bethesda with Fallout 76, which I'll talk about a little later, they messed up with that. They didn't know what they were doing. They did Elder Scrolls Online, now successful. Fallout 76 wasn't good. But now Microsoft, they can talk with Microsoft to like prevent something like that from happening. So if they ever do a Fallout 77 or whatever, they will know exactly what to do, and they'll have the backbone of Microsoft and their online systems to help them. So that was really cool to see, just them just talking about how there's going to be a lot of like cross pollination between the two brands. But the thing we want to really grab though is the big takeaway, and that is what is going on with Bethesda games in the future. Will they be coming to other platforms? Phil Spencer put out I feel like it was a pretty direct statement on it, though there is just a little bit of wiggle room, but I feel like me and you can break down what that wiggle room actually means.
Yeah.
But the quote is from Phil Spencer. He's, I'm going to try and be as clear as I can because I think it's fair. Obviously, I can't sit here and say every Bethesda game is an Xbox exclusive because we know that's not true. There's contractual obligations that we're going to see through. We have games that exist on other platforms, and we're going to go and support those games on those platforms they're on. There's communities of players. We love those communities and will continue to invest in them. And even in the future, there might be other contractual obligations or legacy on different platforms that we'll go and do.
AKA Indiana Jones.
Yes, Indiana Jones is the one I immediately thought of just like Disney property. Unless Microsoft probably pays a little bit of extra, I feel like Indiana Jones will come to PlayStation. There was a little bit more on this where he basically said that every Bethesda game will be exclusive to, or most Bethesda games will be exclusive on platforms
that Game Pass exists.
That Game Pass exists, which I think is very key because there was talk, like 2 years ago that they were trying to get it on Nintendo. But I think that's the key. You don't spend this much money and not do this. But, when he talks about there's already communities, he's not really talking about like, oh, there's people that play Fallout 4 that we don't want to abandon on PlayStation. But there are people that are playing Fallout 76 on PlayStation. There are people that are playing Elder Scrolls Online on PlayStation. They're not going to abandon those people. Like they showed with Minecraft. Like, we'll support that,
including new IPs that are attached to the Minecraft name, which is interesting, like Minecraft Dungeons.
Yeah, which I feel like that's just because Minecraft is a crazy anomaly to where it's like if they didn't, there'd be like millions and millions of little kids that are upset.
Right. Well,
so
I think and I 100% agree with you with the Minecraft being the anomaly of also it can run like on an iPad or a phone.
So
and
why not?
And I think if they're like, well, if we're going to put it on iPads and phones, like we might as well put it on Switch and PlayStation and PC and, Stadia and all this stuff. Like,
yeah. So you said it, Indiana Jones. I feel like that is one of those ones that like, I will not be surprised if that is coming to PlayStation. He talks about like legacy, but I think that really is talking about like ESO and Fallout 76 stuff that already exist. Starfield has no legacy on other platforms. Starfield will be exclusive. They never announced it for any specific platforms.
Okay, yes. Like, so here's like, and this was the conversation I was having with Angela a little bit, and she was kind of like speaking to me from stuff that she was reading a little bit, and just from a non-gamer perspective of like, do you think? And I think the thing that people tend to forget is like, and I'll use Bungie as an example, or even you can use Ubisoft as an example. Like, Ubisoft has to go to Sony and Xbox and Steam and say, hey, like, we want to make said game, and and they would say, okay, like, yeah, we're cool with this, so you can put it on our platform. Here's how much it costs to put it on our platform. You think that's correct? Kind of a short and sweet version of what they're doing.
Yeah, you buy license, you cut them 30%, and then you get to put the game on their market. Right.
So, and I feel like Ubisoft, as a publisher does it, and now Bungie as a self-publisher is starting to do that. But initially with Destiny, Bungie needed somebody to publish their game, or they felt they needed somebody to publish their game, so they paid somebody to publish the game, and that's when the contracts were like, the contract was with PlayStation and Activision through Bungie. So you don't have that with ZeniMax. So the question becomes, like, in terms of like franchises, is Fallout 5 in a name that's been trademarked, that's in production, that Sony was already made aware of, that Bethesda was making? And the answer to that question is like, we don't know.
Yeah, but especially for something like that, like, unless they go out and announce, like, if they did 3 years ago, Fallout 5 is in production, it's coming to PlayStation, they're locked in, and Filster's willing to honor those deals.
Right.
But there's no indication that Fallout 5 or whatever would have to come because Fallout 4.
I guess the more or less what I was saying is, like, maybe the next Wolfenstein is there some agreement that Sony had and Xbox at the time and Steam at the time of, we're bringing Wolfenstein franchise, we're going to bring 4 versions of the game, and they're only on the 3rd version of the game.
Yeah, so that was something I was actually thinking about and debating in my head. Doom and Wolfenstein were both pitched as trilogies. So does Microsoft feel as an obligation, even though they never said for sure these are trilogies, but they've talked about the story as being a trilogy, not that like we are making 3 games.
Yeah.
Does Microsoft feel like some sort of obligation to bring those to platforms? Maybe. But when you have something like Fallout, Fallouts and Elder Scrolls are kind of like Final Fantasy, where they are numbered, but they have nothing with each other.
Right.
So is there really an obligation for those games to continue their stories?
Correct. Yeah, that's kind of like the unknown, and like that's where you get into some murky areas of, like, you might see something that might get announced in the next 6 to 9 months that is coming to all platforms, that Microsoft announces at like their summer event through Bethesda, that's coming to all platforms because that deal was signed 3 years ago, and this is the time that the game became available to be announced. And then at that same event, you might see something announced that's coming out in the same quarter that's exclusive to Xbox because it's a smaller title and Xbox is greenlighting it, or it started to be nurtured and born after the acquisition, or there was never a published signed deal. Like they're working on the back end, like we talked about when they. Like we speculated when, like, before, like, Bethesda had to show LucasArts something of, like, here's our core idea of what we want to do with this game, and we want this to be an Indiana Jones game. So there was something being worked on before they signed the deal to be an Indiana Jones game. So those games are still existing, and until they have, like, a name or a publishing deal, now they can still be incubated and be Microsoft's exclusives, I feel, because they don't have a name or a publishing deal, and they don't need a publishing deal anymore.
Yeah, Dishonored was one of those ones that, Arcane
Dishonored
is kind of...
is Dishonored 3 going to be an Xbox platform exclusive?
Yeah, and is it part of a trilogy? No, not really. So it could easily, they could go either way of just like, well, we release the first 2 on it, but then you get down to a slippery slope where you're like picking and choosing. I don't think Microsoft wants to get into that.
Right. Or do you just go the route where you call it Dishonored : something and just stop numbering it?
Yeah. And then just come out and be like, with Tomb Raider, Microsoft bankrolled Tomb Raider, which is why they got the exclusivity and were able to do that. Do they just come out and say like, hey, Dishonored 3 wouldn't exist unless we paid for it?
Like Sony did with Street Fighter 5.
Yeah, or Death Stranding. You know, Death Stranding, might not have existed unless Sony backed it. So we might have instances like that. I just don't know if Microsoft wants to get into like, okay, this is good, this is good. Oh, we feel bad for this audience. Especially, I don't think any of the games are too big outside of the Elder Scrolls and Fallout. That they Doom not coming to PlayStation, that would suck. But I don't know if the fan base is that big on PlayStation that Microsoft's like, oh, we really don't want to piss off the 2 million people. Knowing that there's a chance that of those 2 million people, a couple 100,000 might have a PC that can run it.
Especially when we pulled the numbers, I was actually surprised at how low. And it's not a dig on them, but I was just surprised at how low Doom's numbers were.
Yeah, they I mean, like the Doom 2016, I think it was like one of those 3 to 5 million sellers.
Those are totally fine, but that's like it's Doom is. I feel like I could talk to my neighbor who doesn't play video games and they would know what Doom is.
Yeah, and that's just because of the legacy, but it also had a long legacy as like a freeware game back in the 90s. We'll see. I feel like this was pretty definitive, like every exclusive from here on out, except for obligations. And I feel like all those obligations are actual contracts, which would be Indiana Jones potentially.
Signed contracts.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any sort of contract like that for Fallout 5. Because that would mean they planned way too far ahead. Because they did Fallout 4, Fallout 76, and the Fallout 5. They wouldn't have signed any deal with Sony ahead of time. Be like, Fallout 5, when we get to it in 10 years, that's good. Like it's not feasible. Elder Scrolls, again, there's no story obligation. Each Elder Scrolls game is a self-contained thing. So like it might have a 6 on it, but there's no real legacy that you have to worry about. And it's not Elder Scrolls, especially. Morrowind wasn't on a PlayStation console. Oblivion came late to PlayStation, so like it wasn't until Skyrim that was day and date on PlayStation. So there's not much of a legacy there.
It's like we mentioned last week. We've seen stuff go like the first or the second and the sequel be exclusive, and then we've seen like a second or third or fourth title become multi-platform, like Mass Effect. But we've really never seen something have as an example, again, like Dishonored, have a first and a second version, and then the third version go exclusive. So, like, that's the part that's weird. But at the same time, like, when Sony decided to make Uncharted, did they know they were going to make 4 games? No.
No. You hope.
Yeah.
But you don't, you're not going to tell everyone working at that studio, like, we're in for 5 games technically because Lost Legacy.
But I think then again, I think like this, like the God of War story is a little bit different. Like where they're hoping to tell another trilogy, like you were saying with like the Doom franchise. Like you can tell that Cory Barlog had a plan, and I'm sure that was talked about when they brought him back to Sony of like what the intentions are. Obviously, intentions can change. If this first God of War flopped, which or this reboot of God of War flopped, which it didn't, it would have squashed the entire project. So that's where these things are never done deals. And we've seen it before where Sony Santa Monica had an awesome supposed like third person sci-fi shooter game that just got nuked. Like, and it seemed like they were kind of far along in it, so, if for some reason, like all of a sudden that game can, a terrible example, but in 7 years of Sony Santa Monica is, like it becomes an independent studio and they decide because they, whether they got the IP or not, and they decide to resurrect it and Xbox pays for exclusivity, or people are going to be like, well, I thought that game was coming to Sony like 9 years ago. Like, it's like unannounced. Like we don't know. So.
Yeah, you want to avoid those situations, which is why the statement like this, even though I feel it's a pretty definitive statement, he left a little wiggle room because he has to leave that wiggle room, of just like, we'll see what happens in the future sort of scenario. And it's because of the scenarios you're talking about that you have to do that.
Yeah.
And Phil Spencer, he does talk off the cuff a lot, but damn well everything he says is ran through a PR and lawyer filter at least once or twice. So everything that he said on there, he knew like, okay, at one point I'm going to address it and I'm going to address it like this. He checked with the lawyers and then he had PR like clean it up a little bit, and then he put a little bit of spin on it to make it seem more personable. That's how he has to speak. In addition to all that, they added 20 Bethesda games to Game Pass. Cool thing they did is 5 of those games got the FPS unlock, which brings them up to 60 FPS. It was Dishonored, Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Skyrim, and Prey. Skyrim's funny because there was a mod to just unlock the frame rate to 60 FPS since day one on Xbox. But I guess they just implemented that mod into the base game now. So that's pretty cool. I really hope, I believe there was a little bit of talk that like some of the older Elder Scrolls games would get that unlocked, but who knows how long that'll take. It's
making me really want to check out. Like I think I dabbled in Dishonored because I feel like it was a Plus game at one point in time, at least the first one.
Yes. Yes.
And I started it, and then it just didn't grab me at the time, or I got distracted. But now, like with upgraded frames and possible better resolution and looking for more games to stream, and I feel like the Game Pass could be something. There's so much stuff on there now that I didn't get to play or that I didn't get to experience, and now it's like it's just kind of like it's there, and it's great that it's there, and then also the fact that I know it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, with the Bethesda ones, they're there forever. The weird thing is they didn't add Doom 2016, even though Doom Eternal was added. Mm-hmm. And I was talking with Justin, I believe his name on Twitter, and we're just like trying to go through of just like, okay, maybe it's on PS Plus or it's on Stadia, and there's some weird contractual reason why it's not on there, because it used to be on there. And then same thing with like Fallout 3, just like, why didn't they include Fallout 3? My idea is it's really fucked up on console, on PC, because it has games for Windows built into it, which has been discontinued. So you have to mod the game if you buy it from Steam to get the game running again. So I'm thinking maybe they're cleaning that up, or it's been long enough. It's been like 10 plus years. Maybe Bethesda's doing a remaster of that. They just don't want to like stomp on that eventual announcement. Especially we're going to get, they said during the summer, during E3 time, there will be a Microsoft showcase where they'll talk about more Bethesda stuff, which just immediately got my mind racing of how fucking crazy Microsoft's E3 like show will be, and what Sony do to retaliate. Because I put out a tweet last night where I'm just rattling off like the announced games and unannounced games from both publishers, or whatever you want to call them. And there's just a ton of stuff. Like, we kind of know what every Microsoft studio is doing except for three. It's like Compulsive Games, In Exile, and Roundhouse Studio. Those are the only ones we don't know about. And then Sony only really has 4 of their studios with announced games, and then the rest of them just wrapped up games in the last 2 to 3 years. So there's a lot of stuff Sony could potentially do, but who knows how far that out those games are. And then Microsoft, we just kind of know like their next 5 years of games that are coming, which either can take excitement away or just at least give you a little bit of comfort knowing like their next 5 years of games coming out. Do you think Sony needs to retaliate at all? Or respond, not retaliate?
No, I don't. I think that, whether, good, bad, or indifferent, I think that they're comfortable with their approach of what they're doing right now. It's obviously it's selling consoles for them. They're not having a problem selling consoles. We're still seeing like Miles Morales is selling really well. I don't think that they're in a bad spot. I think that it's just interesting of like where the dynamic has changed, of where like Microsoft is just kind of dominating the news cycle like every 14 days this year, which
they struggled last year to do. Like Microsoft or Sony would be like, hey, here's a picture of the controller, and would own the internet for like a week, and Microsoft couldn't do that.
But again, achieved that. And I feel like it's kind of going through Game Pass. Like they announced today, like more stuff coming to Game Pass for March, and it's a damn good lineup again. And it's like this is like the third month in a row where it's where it's like there's significant things on there. Like you look at that list, and if you're a video game player, there's at least one thing on there you're like, huh, that's pretty cool. So so I don't think Sony needs to necessarily buy any studio in response to this. We'll talk about a story in like 2 stories about like how they might be able to respond. But I'm just wondering if like they have to, since we now know like Microsoft's plan for the next like 5+ years, do we need to know immediately like, hey, here's an early look at what
Sucker Punch is doing. Here's an early look at what Bend
I
Studios doing.
I don't want it. Most of the studios we know what they're doing is because Microsoft acquired them. And during the acquisition, we found out what they were working on for the most part. And then the other ones are announced games through Microsoft's event. And right. I do not want to know, like, Naughty Dog is like, oh, they're throwing some different things at the wall right now. Like, I don't want to know that.
Well, I feel like they have to do something at like this year's E3, because this year's E3, I know they're not a part of E3, but they'll have a summer showcase. I feel like they need to, especially if Microsoft goes and puts on like this crazy showcase of like, hey, here's demos for all these games that we announced.
No, I think that like the only response that Sony needs is they need to date their shit.
Yeah, but even then, it's like 4 games that they're dating, and then they're kind of done. It's like God of War, Gran Turismo, Horizon, and I think that's kind of the next Spider-Man game. You know, like that's like the only thing left on the slate, because we know Returnal will be out before E3. There you go, Dave. And you know, their Bethesda games will be out there, and Ratchet will be out before E3 though. I'm talking about like summer showcase that we know they're going to probably put on. Like, what is that summer showcase going to be? Is it just going to be like that weird last E3 where it's like, we're only going to show 3 games in these weird extended demos? Or is it, are they going to like show us early stuff? Or are they going to be like, here's The Last of Us Part 2 Factions, or whatever the multiplayer is going to be called? That's what I'm curious about, because it sounds like Microsoft could just be like, hey, we're going to do like a EA Play 3-day event sort of thing with the amount of stuff that they have to show. And I wonder what Sony's response would be, other than the fact that Sony can sell their consoles and it doesn't matter. Like, Sony's at that part where their stuff going to sell out instantly. So, you know, they don't need to worry about it yet, but they will eventually, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I just don't, I mean, I think that they're on completely 2 different sides of the road, and they're both going substantially fast, and they're both being successful. Like, they both can continue this speed, and it's working for both of them. My problem that I've realized over the last 18 months or so is that I just need to see a little bit of variety from Sony.
Yeah, that was something I was also talking to someone on Twitter of, just like when they closed Japan Studio. It was just like, yeah, cool. You guys are the king of third-person games, but there's nothing other than that they do. And when they closed Japan Studio, it's like, oh, that's the one like out that you guys had that you would do something crazy different. And they're lacking that right now, which is a shame. But let's move on. I just put this in here just because this was a game that, Dave, you were kind of interested in, and it just seems kind of crazy that they're doing this. Sorry, this is the last Game Pass news story.
I love this, and I hate this. So.
Yeah, don't worry. We're not gonna do updates to Game Pass. Like, we don't talk about PS Plus games coming.
This is a AAA game, though.
Yeah, this is just like Square trying one more time. Yeah. Outriders is coming day 1 to Game Pass. So Outriders, I think, comes at the end of the month or the beginning of next month. And yeah, it's coming day 1. It's the full game. It's not like a special edition, you know, like a nerfed version of this game. It is the full game. Outriders is coming to Game Pass day 1, only on console, not coming to PC. And the good thing is this does have crossplay. So you might be able to convince, you know, a friend that only has an Xbox, or a friend who might have both Xbox and PlayStation who didn't want to pick it up, period. Now they have an outlet to pick it up, and you can end up going through that entire game with them. Dave, I only put it in here because you talked about something in the Facebook group, and I wanted to give you a larger platform.
So I think, like, to your point with the crossplay, I think this does enormously good things for Outriders. With the crossplay functionality, I have Game Pass. A buddy of mine's asking me, like, what are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Outriders. Or he watches me stream it or anything, and he or she thinks it looks really cool, and they want to play it, but they only have a PlayStation 4. Hey, not a problem, man. Like, go ahead, pick it up if you want to pick it up, and I can play with you because we can do crossplay. So that's where I think that this helps game sales overall. The part that I hate about it is, like, somebody like a listener and a good friend of mine that plays games with me, Randy. The game was announced. He looked at it. He goes, "That looks really cool." He played the demo. He actually enjoyed the demo. He pre-ordered it on PSN. He got his pre-order canceled But it took like 30 or 45 minutes, he said, and Sony pretty much told him like, well, this is the only time you're allowed to cancel a pre-order. And
Yep,
so
Sony is the worst one at that.
Yeah, so he's like, he's kind of messaging me the other day. He's like, well, this is probably the last time I pre-order something on PSN. I said, I get it. I'm not a huge fan of pre-orders either. If I do think something is cool, like, and I get a nice pre-order bonus, typically I'll pre-order at like 9:00 at night, the night before it comes out. Like the day before it comes out.
That's what I do as well.
Yeah, so like there's a little bit of a saving grace there. At its core, like this game was supposed to come out like 6 months ago. So like this deal just seems like really weird. And then they also this is coming on the heels of them releasing all this data about how many people played the beta or the demo. And I think it said like 4 million people played the demo or have played the demo. And the only thing I can think of is that somebody at Square Enix saw, okay, and I'm using very rough figures. These are not exact. I'm like, this is full disclaimer. This is just me shooting out of the mouth. Okay. That 4 million people downloaded and played our demo and 500,000 or 500,000 pre-ordered.
Yeah.
So they're freaking out. Now,
yeah.
If we've already heard like Square Enix has unrealistic expectations for game sales, okay? So if on Xbox, let's just say that Square Enix had the thought of at a greatly successful, I'm using air quotes, a greatly successful game sales for them is 2 million units, okay? On Xbox, 2 million units. Keep in mind, this is not available on the Xbox, on the Microsoft Store for PC. It's only available on Steam and Epic. And this is also part of the reason I think it's not on Game Pass for PC. That now Microsoft comes to them and says, we'll give you the funds to cover 1.2 million in sales.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay. And anybody would do it. Like if you have a product that you're like all your focus groups and everything are telling you like good, better, best. Good is 1 million. Better is 1.4 million and best is 1.8 million. And you're looking at it and like, so, and you get right in the middle. Somebody comes in there and gives you like, you're making a basket and you think you can sell 2 million baskets and somebody comes and I'll buy 1.3 million of them right now, cash up front from you. You would take it.
Yeah. They're basically being like, hey, we're going to take the risk of launching a game out of your hands. And now it's just on you and the developer to keep them there. And to get more people to play that game.
And this will 100% help game sales on Steam, on Epic, on PlayStation, because it has crossplay.
Yes.
Like 100%.
Yeah, it definitely will. Yeah. And we've seen developers come out and say, like, their game sells better after it's on Game Pass, or why it's on Game Pass, it will sell better.
And then if it goes away, like the same thing, it was happening in A Band of Gamers, another podcast that I pay attention to. In their Discord, there was conversation, like, I guess Witcher 3 is leaving Game Pass.
Yes.
And somebody was like, I'm not as far through it as I want to be. And I said, hey, I believe that anything that's currently on Game Pass that you decide to purchase, you automatically get 20% off whatever the price is. Because,
it's like 10 or 20%.
Yeah, because you're a Game Pass subscriber, and then it just carries over. He goes, oh, I didn't know that, and he's like, that's cool. And then he bought it because now he's just protected. You'll get notified of what's leaving Game Pass. If you're in the middle of playing it or you enjoyed it, buy it.
Yeah. They have good messaging when you load up the Game Pass thing. It's like the 13 down is like games leaving this month, and they put them all in there. So yeah, this helps Square. I'm sure people can fly or super thrilled by this because it's like, okay, we have at least somewhat of a kind of a guarantee or base. It's not a guarantee that all, like, what is it, like 5 or 10 million people that have Game Pass are going to download it, but it at least means that there's a chance.
20 million people have Game Pass. But then if you start cutting the number down just to Game Pass, not Game Pass Ultimate, you're probably closer to 8 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then PC and all that stuff.
Right.
So,
you can play it on the phone too.
Yeah, you can play it on the phone.
I wouldn't, but...
Yeah, there's only a couple games that I've been able to actually enjoy on the phone. But yeah, this is one of those things where crossplay is going to be super important for this, because that's one thing that always kills me about like multiplayer games is just like eventually the player base will dwindle, but now it's just like, oh, even if it dies on PlayStation or PC, there's this people that always have access to it on Game Pass forever, or how long it's on Game Pass, so they'll keep this game running a little bit longer. So I don't know,
but it also doesn't need to run longer. See, that's like, there's a perception of this game and it's the fault of Square Enix, because I was confused at what it was for a while too. But there's this perception that this is a games as a service, and it's not. It's a 35 to 40 hour experience. It has a little bit of post campaign stuff, and it looks like you can do some build crafting in it. That's it.
There will be DLC. There'll be expansions most likely.
As of right now,
successful.
As of right now, whatever they're putting in the box is what you're getting. Like they have not announced anything. They are not doing any like summer event or post launch content. They're not doing any of that. Everything is in the game. And so it's just really, it's really interesting. And the part of it, like to circle back to some of the other conversation we were having though, of like, when you start looking, you see an advertisement for Outriders, and if it has that Game Pass logo on it, on TV, on a YouTube ad, on a Twitter ad, whatever, it's going to make you think about it. And the part that there was a picture of Phil Spencer this week that he was playing on a Surface. He was playing Destiny 2 on a Microsoft Surface, and people are like, what app is he using? It's because he's using this browser-based thing that's in beta. Or that's in like super secret testing, and I'm telling you right now, and my wife, who's she shrugged this off a little bit, and lately she's the only person I can really talk to about this, like face to face because of COVID. But if they get this working, if they get Game Pass working on an iPad, which is speculated through this browser functionality this summer, it's
definitely happening.
It's game over. Like in terms of you want to see their subscriptions go up. If you're telling that, because like my daughter's iPad that she bought for college, that damn thing is like a 1080p 1440 hertz monitor. Like, and if she can get that working and you just got to buy a $50 controller and you spend $15 a month, and I can prop my iPad up while I'm on the couch watching TV and I can play Destiny, Doom, Outriders, Fallout, it's crazy.
Here, this is how far they are with that browser experience. Right now, if you're in like the highest reign of the Xbox dashboard beta, on the Edge browser, you could play Stadia games. Mm-hmm. Like that's how far they are with like getting stuff running. So xCloud will be on the browser, and that's how they bring it to the console as well for cloud, for the people that don't want to download.
But like I still think you could just take it.
It's coming soon.
You could take it from your iPad and stream it to your 50-inch television, like mirror it to your television if you have like Apple TV. Like these are the things that people aren't thinking about, and this is why the iOS thing last year was such a big deal. If this happens, like if they get it and it works well, this is the console-less market that we were talking about. Go buy a controller that's Bluetooth capable, download it on your iPad or your Google Pixel or your super souped up Samsung phone, and mirror it to your television, because that technology is getting better every single month.
Yeah, it's continuing to get better, and especially on Game Pass Mobile, you can use your DualShock controller. Mm-hmm. You can use pretty much any Bluetooth controller, and it will recognize it. It won't change the prompts, but it'll recognize it. Mm-hmm. This is definitely the way things are going, and I'm sure eventually in the summer or next CES they'll partner with Samsung or LG, and they'll just throw a controller in the box with a new TV. Like your controller will probably be an Xbox controller for eventually a year, instead of a regular remote. It's gonna be, here's an Xbox controller, and it'll confuse the shit out of old people. But that's where it's going.
Circling back to Outriders, and I said this out loud today. I'm like, holy crap! I have to do this now. So I played Outriders demo on PS5. I enjoyed it. It's fun. I was like, cool, the progress carries over. I almost pre-ordered this game on PSN, and then I almost bought a code last weekend on like CD Keys or something like that. That was like $10 off, and it was an Xbox code. And I was like, all right. So then thankfully I didn't do that, because if I would have bought that code, I would have been screwed. But your progress does carry over. So if you are intending to play it on April 1st and you have Xbox, download the demo on your Xbox, play it, figure out which class you like. Whatever you did or didn't like, your progress will carry over. Anything you earn in there will carry over. You can get to like level 7. You can get the prologue out of the way, which is kind of boring, so get it out of the way. And then kind of just get into the meat and potatoes of the game, and then figure out if you like it, and figure out if it's, at this point in time with Game Pass, like figure out if it's worth your hard drive space.
All right, let's get off the Game Pass stuff, because I'm sure some people are rolling their eyes at all of our Game Pass talk. But jumped into, this just happened this morning. We're just talking about Jade Raymond, but she has formed a new studio called Haven in Montreal. and their first client is PlayStation. So PlayStation is backing this independent studio. Jade Raymond, games she's produced include, Assassin's Creed. I think she was like one of the heads of Assassin's Creed 2, and then she was also instrumental in Watch Dogs, the first game. She previously was at EA Motive, and Visceral. That didn't go well, as we know. And then she went over to Stadia to be in charge of the Stadia game studios, and that also didn't go well. So she's decided to go independent and kind of get away from like signing with a big company. She is signing with PlayStation, but sort of. It is her own studio. Yeah, it's an independent studio. I kind of liken this to what they did with Kojima, where it's like, Kojima, form your studio, and then we'll give you money for your first game, and it'll be exclusive to us for however long. So that's what they're doing with her, is she now has her studio funded, and they're making their first IP, which will be exclusive to PlayStation. So smart move. It's been a while since I feel like she's had a win, based on the last 5-10 years have gone. I'm sure financially it was very good for her. But in terms of as a creative person, it must suck to be like, I'm at EA, I'm working on Visceral, I'm working on Motive, and I'm doing Star Wars games, and then having those games just get pulled from out under you. And then Google's like, we're taking gaming serious, and then, or like at the very end, psych. And then they close all that stuff down. So it sounds like there is an actual game happening here. And PlayStation definitely needs new IP, and they need studios. So this is like a second party deal, basically. So any thoughts on this? I know it's early. We don't know what game they're working on. We're going to show the studio's being made. You're a very impatient man, as we know about with Death Stranding. But the
difference was happy. Like they called it Death Stranding, like they named it. They now they're like, she's working on, like she's building the team, and Kojima, I guess, was building the team, and then we heard about it, and then we heard about he was working on a game, and then they named it. And I still felt, if you go back and look at it, it didn't take that long to come out in terms of physical scope, but the amount of times that the word Kojima or Death Stranding was used in PlayStation events was getting ridiculous. I feel like if at this point in time, though, if Sony had this much faith in this person and her, they would have either just given her a studio or made a studio for her that they owned.
No, so it's the way I see it, especially by someone who's been burned by big publishers before. Mm-hmm. This feels like this would probably be her call.
But she's still in bed with them because they're...
Yeah, but they can't, like... She was forming her own studio anyways and just got the funding.
But they're still going to tell her what to do.
Yeah, but it's not like they already agreed to whatever she pitched them, So it's not like, at EA where EA's like, all right, pitch us something. Oh, actually, you're going to be working on the vehicles in Battlefront 2.
That's fine. I get that. I agree with that. The track record you just listed ain't that good.
It had so much potential, but
it's not her fault. Okay, let's take it away. It's not her fault what happened to Stadia. Not her fault what happened to the Star Wars and the Visceral stuff. Like I'm removing those from the occasion. Impact on the first Watch Dogs, arguably of the three that are out, the worst. Obviously the first one, so it always gets that caveat. Which Assassin's Creeds? Because
1 and 2, and 2's considered like one of the
but one is considered like franchise. Something that just doesn't age well. And again, it's the first entry of a franchise. Yeah.
At the time, not many people were complaining about Assassin's Creed 1.
It's just been a long time since she she produced a game.
Yeah.
Since she molded the clay into something. It's like with her hands.
Yeah, because she was supposed to work with Amy Hennig on the Star Wars game that got canceled. I think she was with Visceral, and then she was doing Motive, who was supposed to be like a new creative studio, and then all they ended up doing was supporting the Battlefront games. This is basically a good move, like a very cost-effective move for Sony. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to put down, hundreds of millions or anything like that. They still make a game.
They still bought an exclusive, or a timed exclusive, and everybody seems to be like, "Oh, this is a cool thing." But then Bethesda Microsoft buys a company and like, "Oh, this is bullshit."
That's just how it ends up going for a lot of people. No one's complaining about Deathloop's exclusivity.
No, because it's on the platform they play on.
Yeah, and no one's mad about Ghostwire Tokyo. That's how exactly. But I guess this is the type of move that we can probably expect from Sony right now, just because I don't think there's much more for them.
This is the same relationship they have with Resogun. There you go, Dave from Philly. I said it. See, this is the same relationship they have with whatever they decide to have Blue Point do. They don't own Blue Point, but they pretty much tell them what to do, or they say, here's money, do what we say. And that's what Blue Point is, and like that's fine. And I hope that this, again, like I've been screaming it, like I hope that this studio puts out a new, interesting, cool IP.
Yeah, I'm gonna be bummed if it's a third person adventure game. I love them, but like
at this point in time, I would take a first-person adventure game from a Sony studio.
Exactly, like it's one of those things where it's just like I love all the Sony, and like here I'm complaining, and all the Sony games that they put out have become my favorite games.
I am too, but as soon as they announce Uncharted 5, I'm pre-ordering it.
But at the same time, I'm
or
just like, I
Infamous
just don't want to be in
4 or
third
3
person.
or whatever, or the next God of War. Like, I mean, like I'm on board for the next God of War, the next Horizon, as soon as they finish the first one. Spider-Man, if they ever do try to revisit Infamous, keep going with Uncharted, like keep going with Last of Us. Like I'm all here. I'm here for it, but I want to see a PS5 exclusive take on a shooting game.
Yeah,
like from a Sony studio. Like not Bethesda and Ghostwire, or not Bethesda and Deathloop. Like I want to see studio, like the alleged creme de la creme, do a first person game.
Yeah, I just want Echo Chrome or The Last Guy or Tokyo Jungle. I just want some small, which I almost kind of hope this studio will produce. But who knows how that will the size and scope of this one. We'll probably find out pretty early. Kind of sounds like she already has the team built, but we're definitely ways off from that. All right, last news story. I usually don't put rumor stuff in here, but it's just been snowballing the last month or so with leaks and rumors. But let's talk about the Nintendo Switch news that has been kind of leaking from like Bloomberg and other places. Video Games Chronicles, I think, was another one. So a Switch refresh is coming. There's a couple factors on why. The first factor is this is the known factor that like Bloomberg was able to source out and confirm. Nintendo is going to do a 7-inch OLED screen for the new Switch.
What's the size of the current one?
It's 5.5 or 6 something.
Okay.
So this is just a little bit bigger. It's going to be OLED as opposed to LCD, and then apparently they're planning to have the new Switch.
This sounds terrible.
Go from 720p handheld to 4K on the dock, which I don't think is true. That's a part that just doesn't make sense for me. But the reason they're upgrading Switch, the handheld screen, is because two factors. The LCD panel they currently use apparently is being discontinued. And it'll cost them extra money to keep the factory going. And the price for OLEDs at the 7-inch size have dropped drastically. And and Nintendo's whole MO has always been get the most cost-effective parts and, use them to their fullest until
it's how they keep their system at $300.
They're always profitable.
Yeah.
So this upgrade will keep them probably still at the $300 price point. Like, won't have to raise the price, but they can consider this a Switch Pro. The weird thing is that Dave responded to is the idea that in dock it will be able to do 4K. Developers...
Wait! Stop! Do you even have any confidence that Nintendo can even do 4K?
No. Here's why I don't like. So currently, developers have been kind of having an issue of getting the games currently with the hardware on the Switch to support 720p and 1080 because the hardware is very limited. And the idea that Nintendo is going to then make that gap way larger sounds kind of crazy to me. But here's where the rumor comes in. Apparently NVIDIA, who makes the chip, the processor, apparently they are also discontinuing the processor because it's an old processor and they don't want to make them anymore. Nintendo's going to have to upgrade the processor. So Nintendo will have to do a new iteration regardless of what they want to do, unless they buy up all the chips before NVIDIA like shuts down the production and then just live out their life with whatever they have from NVIDIA. Apparently the units are already in people's or are already at developers and they're using them. But a reporter from Kotaku, former reporter from Kotaku, Imran Khan, he said this is more like a pro move. Like, this is Switch Pro. This isn't Switch 2. All that the new processors will be able to do is stable FPS and better resolutions. But the 4K thing seems to be the one sticking point that a lot of people just don't think is feasible. Especially trying to make a 720p game and doing 4K just sounds crazy.
Well, and do we need Mario in 4K? Do we need Donkey Kong and Zelda in 4K? Again, this is no slight on an independent game, but like is an independent studio which has been, it's either, I feel like with Nintendo right now, it's either their AAA owned studio marquee franchises or it's indies. There's not really an in between right now, and is an indie even going to try to make a game in 4K?
Some probably would if they don't have to put extreme amount of work into doing it. It sounds like the way it almost sounds like reading different articles with different sources of the chip just happens to be capable of 4K, and the reason they're doing 720 on the OLED is because the cheapest OLED they can get happens to be 720.
Yeah, Cordy said in the chat, like, maybe it's Netflix in 4K. Like, you know how many things in my house I have that can play Netflix? I'm not going to my Switch to play Netflix. At least not on my television. Like, I might do it in like tablet form, but yeah, like maybe not everybody's in the same boat, and that could be a selling caveat of a streaming service in 4K.
Yeah, which is Netflix even on the Switch?
I don't know.
Like, I know Hulu is, but I don't know if Netflix is.
I know YouTube is, because that's what Owen's using
his
Switch for 50% of the time, is to watch YouTube.
Yeah. So it sounds like maybe the new processor can do 4K, and the only reason it's going to be limited to 720 on a panel is that's how cheap Nintendo is, where like the OLEDs that are 720 are on sale, and they're buying as many of those as they can.
Yeah, but that would require like the hardware. Like, I just feel like just even like messing.
You would have to put something in the dock.
Yeah, like messing in my office right now. Like, oh, like let me plug this into here. Like, oh, like this. You don't have a port powerful enough to carry this signal in my PC, and it's like, okay, so what are you gonna put? Are you gonna put like are we talking like a USB-C connection that's gonna like take 4K and put it through the dock and like not have your dock like hover?
The dock is USB-C right now. So apparently because the OLED, that means the battery life will be better and they're thinner. So they might be able to reuse the old dock, but the actual Switch itself is going to be thinner and lighter. So they might have to make people buy new docks, but who knows? Like,
Nintendo will just sell the Switch, presuming you already have a dock, and then sell the dock separately, even though it'll work with your other one.
Most likely, like it'll go in there, but how tight is that going to be? The weird thing
they'll
that
send you little plastic adapter slides, like a little railing.
But you have to do some quests to get it or something. The weird thing that I saw was that apparently Nintendo will allow developers to support the old Switch or the new Switch. Like, if they only want to use the new Switch, they can. Apparently that is also an issue where a lot of developers aren't bringing their games to the Switch because the hardware can't handle it. Though apparently enough people said that Nintendo
Apex is running on it now. What can it not handle?
It runs like shit.
I know it does. So does Borderlands, and the other thing.
But that's the problem. Is like Nintendo feels like they're missing out on third-party game again, even though they don't usually.
Okay, so okay? Let me ask you this then: if Nintendo's allowing you, like, I don't even know what game this would be because all these other studios are getting bought by Sony or Microsoft. If Borderlands 4. Who would be the first one to say, you know what, you can play Borderlands 4 on the Switch, but you can only play it in dock mode?
I feel no. So I don't think it would be dock
would Nintendo
mode.
allow it? No. I'm saying like our game Like Borderlands 4 can't run in 720p. Like it just doesn't do it.
No. So it won't be that. What it'll be is you can only use the Switch Pro. You can't.
Yeah, but I'm saying
OD
like
Switch.
it's only going to work on the Switch Pro, and it's only going to work in dock mode.
I don't think that will ever happen because
Okay.
Nintendo, that would be too crazy because they are going to have to refresh the light if the processor rumor is true anyways. So like they're going to keep the light because that sells really well. It's just going to be a matter of will developers actually only put stuff out on the Switch Pro versus the regular Switch, and how that will make a mess of their store. Or like they'll have to have a separate
You can't
Switch
buy
Pro
this game.
store.
Your hardware is incapable.
Yeah. So this is all rumor and speculation, though. It sounds like the panel thing is pretty much confirmed. Of like old panels discontinued, new panels are cheap. They're going to run with that and kind of stretch out the Switch thing. Just because even some indie games are starting to run like garbage on a Switch. For a while, like 2 years ago, if an indie game came out on PlayStation, Xbox, or Switch, I bought it on a Switch because it was just a fun experience. Now, even some indie games run like shit on the Switch to where I'm going like, okay, I'm going to go back to the bigger consoles just because
Yeah, so
my indie
now
machine
it's gonna go
can no
like
longer keep up.
PC, Switch, PlayStation, Xbox. Like I feel like that'll
Yeah.
like for a little while there, PC and Switch were neck and neck for indies, just because like the Steam early access, what they offered, letting people play your game, check it out, see if they want it, see if they don't want it, like that stuff was always interesting and cool. And then I agree, like their Joy-Cons are rough, but I and again, like I have my Xbox Series S as my Game Pass machine and hub. I have my Nintendo Switch as my Nintendo games. Like I like Zeldas, I like Mario's. There's safe games that Owen can play. Like I like the Mario 3D World, Bowser's Fury, Luigi's Mansion, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze. Like I can go on and on. The next Metroid, like, and I guess I'd be curious, like, is Metroid, this other Metroid having a hard time being developed because of the power of the Switch? Probably, based on what the studio's evolving and wanting to do. But I just, I feel like that I have faith out of everybody that Nintendo will make it work. In terms of like you'll get a good experience. If I buy the Metroid on Switch, I'll have a good experience. Like Nintendo doesn't put their name on it, and if it's not a good experience. But this is the same company that like I 5 years ago or 6 years ago said, man, making HD games is hard.
Yeah. And then they put out HD games and it's like, these are beautiful.
Right.
Like I'm thinking they're gonna go the DS route for the Switch, where there was so many. There's DS, DSi, DS Lite, 3DS, new 3DS, 2DS, where it was like the same basic hardware but little upgrades here and there. I think they're going to go that route with the Switch just because it was so successful for them on the DS, because when you combine all the sales for all the different DS variants, it was crazy. And
they just need to make sure that before they do this, they get all that old battery model off the shelves. like there can't be two versions of Switch and then a new version Switch Pro or something like that. There can't be like like where you're trying to shop for it and it's like, oh, this is the old, like, don't get this one, this one's got the bad battery, like.
Yeah, which is why I think they're not going to like try and buy whatever processors they can get away with and try and stock up on LCD panels, because eventually they're going to have to make this move, and it'll probably be this year that they do this, and they'll buy them probably another 2-3 years before they have to announce.
So you think it would come out this holiday?
So in a Bloomberg thing, it says that they're going to go in production in June, and they're hoping to have 1 million within a month or two of when they go in production, or they're going to try and produce 1 million every month, which would probably put them at like a November release with like 3 to 5 million.
Okay, but what do you bring out with it?
That's the problem. Is
it Breath of the Wild 2 that we haven't heard anything about?
Maybe if they move it to March, maybe Breath of the Wild comes out in March next year, but I think they would want it out for the holidays, and Nintendo's just cocky enough to be like, we're Nintendo.
Splatoon.
We got you later.
Whatever it is, Splatoon 3.
That's next year, or dated for next year.
Okay,
so
like
yeah, Bayonetta and No More Heroes come out at the end of the year, right? Bayonetta still exists.
That's not. Those aren't marquee enough to launch with the system. Not Nintendo's
but
way. So
Well, they do have a new Pokemon game coming out this holiday, but I don't think that new Pokemon game is. We already saw the trailer. Does not look like that's pushing the hardware, but that would be enough of an excuse for them to be like, here's Pokemon. It can run on both, but here's Pokemon with a new console.
Yeah.
And that might be just enough to get up through the holidays for Breath of the Wild. Unless they want to have like a big launch and wait for Breath of the Wild 2 and do it like next holiday. But who knows? That's it for news, Dave.
All right. What we're playing and watching, go ahead.
Yeah, mine's pretty light. Just some more Yakuza Like a Dragon. NBA 21 has just kind of consumed me because it's the game I can play with my brain turned off. A little Final Fantasy 14, not as much as the previous weeks. Sarah's gotten like super far. I think she's already into like the third expansion, which I don't have access to because I'm just using whichever disc I bought a while, which only came with Heavensward, which is like the first expansion. So I got to catch up and probably purchase the other expansions. I did promise one of our listeners, I think it was Will, that I will play Fallout 76 on my day off this week. So I'm going to play Fallout 76.
How did that come up in conversation?
He's been pitching me to play Fallout 76 for 2 years since I gave it a horrible review score because it's been fixed multiple times. So I downloaded it because it was on Game Pass and they added 60 frames per second, which was one of the issues I had with Fallout 76. But I do have Fallout New Vegas downloaded and ready to go when Fallout 76 breaks or like just, gets corrupt or something. I can play a good Fallout game immediately after it crashes. And then the Outer Worlds, it just got a 60 FPS patch on PlayStation and Xbox. So I am looking to jump into that as well. Just going to get all my like Fallout type games in later this week. But the main thing I was playing, which was a good chunk of yesterday, was Century Age of Ashes. This is a free-to-play game that comes out currently in open beta on Steam for the next 2 weeks. This is a competitive like dragon fighting game. So you're riding dragons. It looks like it takes place in kind of like that medieval time sort of thing. And you're riding dragons. You have different classes. There's like a healer, like a more stealthy character, and kind of like a tank character. And in the only 2 modes that I've played, I don't know if there's more modes that will be unlocked later, is Team Deathmatch and Capture the Flag. But overall, like the flying feels really good. Like it feels good and it looks good. I'm playing it on Steam. There's no news of a console release for it right now, so it's just free to play on PC. Each dragon or the rider has different abilities and different like fireballs and stuff like that. My favorite character to play is the one that can like turn invisible for a couple seconds, which is a good way to like avoid enemies because you're basically just dogfighting. Like it's just you're flying around this map, just killing each other left and right. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and that character's ability to just turn invisible is like super handy when you're being chased because you just immediately just disappear off the map and just you can get away. The free-to-play aspect gives me hope that this will actually like survive a little bit, just because I see a lot of these like competitive games get released and they immediately just kind of disappear. But I was always able to find a match in this beta without waiting longer than like 30 seconds. So I'm hoping there's a little bit more there. It looks like there are like loot box sort of hooks in it, but I didn't get too in depth with that. But you can customize your character and your dragon in all sorts of different colors and like armor pieces. So I see that hook in there, but the important thing is the gameplay was really fun. And I enjoyed it. And I was actually not too bad. Like I'm horrible at like flying games. Like when we would play Warhawk back in the day, I would never get in a Warhawk because I was terrible at flying and air combat. But in this, I actually really enjoyed the way it felt, and I actually were very easy to understand the controls and get away and fight people because it does kind of auto lock to enemies when you're like shooting your fireballs or just like doing a flame at them, and it's very fast moving. So when I died, it was just because of the chaos, as opposed to like someone super outplayed me, which I'm sure that happened, but it didn't feel like anyone was like, super OP or anything like that. So Century Age of Ashes is something to check out. I'm hoping it comes to console, just because I don't mind playing on PC, but consoles is where I'm the most comfortable at.
Yeah,
but,
are you playing controller or mouse and keyboard?
Controller, just plugged in the Xbox controller into it. Now that I have an Xbox controller, I don't have to like try and fight.
Yeah.
And I noticed, like, even though the NBA game is very basic game to talk about, but that game has taught me the Xbox controller layout so well, because you need, like, you hit one button and then all the buttons pop up for what player you want to throw it to. And that has really helped me kind of get over the problem that I've had for years switching from controller to controller, of just like, I don't know the Xbox controller enough. But now, after playing like a dozen hours of 2K, I'm like, oh, I know where the X button is. I'm not going to hit the wrong one this time. So that has definitely helped me out in getting over that fucking annoying thing. Now, if there's an E3, I won't look like an idiot when they hand me an Xbox controller.
Every time a prompt shows up on the screen.
Yeah, they're like, hit X, and I keep hitting A, and they're just like, no, oh god damn it. So that is it for me.
All right, you didn't watch anything interesting, or?
Nothing of interest.
Yeah, I didn't really watch anything either. So I had a corporate visit at work last week, so that took up a little bit of my time. That was kind of like happening like right after we recorded last week, and then I've still been kind of just messing with my office, not enough, but a little bit. And then I've just been like, I don't know if it's allergies or I've just been really tired and kind of like just out of it. We watched, my wife and I just caught up on our regular shows, like our just random comedies. The new Keenan show on Hulu, or I think it's on NBC, where he like hosts a morning show. I think it's just called Keenan. He's from Keenan and Kel, from all that, like back in the day. I thought it'd be a lot funnier than it is. It's still a decent show, but I was just hoping it would just be like a laughing comedy, and it's not there yet for me. My wife is having a really hard time with Superman and Lois. She wants to like the show, but she's like, we talked about before, she's at the point where she's tired of seeing like the show climb this hill to fight the supervillain and balance all these other stories at the same time. And then you come over the top of the hill and you have to climb it again because there's another villain. So she's just, and that's kind of like, superheroes always good versus evil, but she's kind of at the point where she's not sure where she's at with that. Dabbling in Destiny still. They've done a really good job of, giving you a reason to sign in every week. And I did a couple of like the six man activities with 12 people in them, and that's just hilarious. Just like the ads would come out and they like it's like they wouldn't know what to do. Like the red bar enemies would come out and they're like, which way did he go? Which one do we go after? Like it was kind of entertaining that it couldn't keep up or know what to do. But I'm in a funk. I'm 100% in a funk. I don't know what to play. And there's all this stuff on Game Pass that I want to play on my Xbox that I want to play. Outriders can't come soon enough. In terms of at least something else to draw my attention away that's gathered some of my attention. And I think that I actually, as much as I said that I've always been of the camp of delete and re-download, like I feel like I need to buy the Xbox expansion card, because I looked at it the other day. My son is playing Jedi Fallen Order on Xbox. NBA 2K21 is on Xbox because a community member gifted it to me because I think he bought 2 copies of it or whatever. My son plays that, and I have Destiny on there, just to try to play some more on the Xbox, and like that's like all I can hold.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is you can play a good chunk of those games off an external drive, so you don't have to spend a crazy amount of money cost to get expansion cards. So those expansion cards are $220, and that's not including tax.
Right.
But luckily, you can put any non-Series X game on.
So even like Dishonored,
drives.
if I want Dishonored to run with the frame update, that's running on Xbox Ones essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Because that update went to like all.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I can look at that. That might save me some cash. I'll mess with the.
You probably have.
I gotta drive. Yeah, I'm sure I gotta drive. So I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I have this tangible desire. Like I enjoy playing games with other people, especially because like I I don't really socialize a lot right now. I don't count work as socializing. When I have customers tell me I don't read your signs, therefore they don't apply to me. Like that doesn't count as socialization for me. So like that's where Destiny comes from. There's 4 or 5 people in the party chat. We're just talking. We're playing the game, doing some stuff. Like so I want to play Gears. I think I'm probably just gonna jump into like Gears 4, Gears 5 at this point. And again, that's where like Outriders came into the fold. But I do think like I want to give Dishonored a go. Like so, like just tweet at me or post it on Facebook like what you think that I should play that maybe I haven't played, and we can have a conversation. I would love some recommendations or some things to try, because I'm kind of at this point where I almost feel like I need to like try to tangibly, as crazy as it sounds, like schedule myself. Like week 1 is Xbox, week 2 is Switch, week 3 is PlayStation, week 4 is whatever else I need to catch up on. I would love to have a game like a Dishonored or something like grab me and suck me in and me want to play it and get it done in like a week, like that, in a couple days.
You have to do what I did a couple months ago, where I like specifically went through all my backlog and I'm like 4 hours long. What game is like less than 10 hours? And then I went through as many of those as possible, and that got me kind of out of like not playing video games.
Yeah. So it's so easy to come home, stick the headsets on, turn Destiny on, and just do something. Like it's so easy. And then there's always somebody there that's like, hey, will you help me with this, or can we do this together? And there's things that I need to do that are 2-man activity or 3-man activity or 6-man, and there's enough people on there. I'm like, all right, let's go. And it's just and it's fun, and it's just like you said, it's like mindless. Like it's like you when you play 2K, like I don't have to think about anything. I'm so comfortable playing Destiny. I don't really, even on hard activities, like I'm like, okay, like I'm just kind of going through the motions. I'm enjoying it. I'm laughing. I'm having fun. I'm getting cool stuff. Like I'm almost max power in the first month of the season. I haven't been max power since like the first year of Destiny 2. Like just because there was a lot of times that I'm like, it's not really worth it, and I don't care. And it's still kind of not worth it to be max power, but it's there. And my friends are there, and like, let's play. And I'm like, okay, So yeah, I know a lot of people are like, oh, Dave, only like Destiny's got it hooked into me right now. And this is the same person. Like in November, December, I'm like, Beyond Light's cool, but it wasn't enough. And like for whatever reason, this season has grabbed me, and I don't know why. I don't, other than it's just the state of my mind right now. Like. As bad as it sounds, but all right. I don't think we have any questions, so you guys didn't really send us any questions. So feel free to send us some. I know, like, I don't think you saw it, but like Stefan put something like, if COVID's over and you can go anywhere you want for like a month straight, like where are you going?
Disneyland.
Yeah. I definitely want to take Owen somewhere. Like we're even toying with it. We've got like a water park that's like a couple hours away, with stimulus money coming soon. Like maybe we'll take him to this giant indoor water park. Like it should die in humidity and chlorine, right?
No, might have to wait just a little bit longer.
I know. I don't know. But we'll see how this goes. In our state, at least, like vaccinations to be available to me like next month. So
same. I think.
Yeah, something like that. And my wife, you can see how tangible she can get PlayStation 5s. She'll get me a vaccination.
I just like that our jobs last year were like, these guys are essential workers, and now it's time to get the vaccines, and our jobs are like, they weren't really that essential. It's just like, okay, I guess I'll wait till May.
All right, so please send us some questions, gaming related, not gaming related, food related, not food related. Like Palmer's giving Michael crap about pretzel crisps already. Like
pretzels are trash.
You can listen to our food episode under the $7 Patreon tier. I'm kidding, but at the same time, patreon.com/digitaldays. But yeah, just go ahead, send us questions, #AskDigitalDays. You can post them on Discord, Twitter, post them in the Facebook group, any of those things. Those links are in the show notes. You can follow the main account at Digital Days Pod, where we're trying to tweet some more interactive stuff. Like I did that poll for Outriders. You've done a couple things of like thoughts on this or thoughts on that. So that's kind of where we're going for. We should maybe do a better job of retweeting some trailers and stuff, but they really haven't announced anything other than that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle trailer looked cool. That's coming, but that's at least 6-7 months out, I would assume, because they didn't date it at all. But then you can also follow Michael's account at the first MJC 1ST. You can follow me at Good Dave Hunt. Again, join the Facebook group, join our Discord, and then the Patreon is there. You can check out the tiers if there any of those interest you. and Teesprings, PayPal, all that stuff. Any way that you would love to financially support us is there and available and as an option to you. Nowhere near any obligation to do so at all. But there's just multiple ways. If you want to support us, you can. And then, as always, just sharing the show, leaving a review helps us grow tremendously. Every time we post, if it's reviewed, if it's reviewing well, it shows up higher on the charts. If you're sharing it to other people, we might get some more, more ears on the show, and then, more people that can get involved in the community and diversifying our game library. If you're friends with people that play on Xbox games or Steam games and they're looking for something to listen to, hey, let us know. Like, some people are out driving a little bit more, so maybe they like to listen to podcasts when they're driving and they're looking for something. Like, feel free to recommend us. Recommendations are free and always appreciated. You got anything else, Michael?
No. You think you covered it all.
All right, guys. I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick.